It's so good to see that you are all still here. There have been some great debates, and I'm sure we can add to them with this session. We had a lot of discussion about mobility, but maybe not so much about aesthetics yet. But then again, you have to think, what is aesthetics today? It cannot be viewed independently. We talk and read about relational aesthetics, dialogic aesthetics, the beauty of a social problem. So really, obviously, there's no point in talking just about aesthetics separately. But I think in the following two presentations, we will approach aesthetics maybe a little bit in depth in two very different ways. One will be about a theater project, and the other presentation not about a theater project. In a way, both deal with homes, and we have seen yesterday that when we talk about mobility, we cannot avoid first thinking about identity, who we are, where are we based physically and symbolically, and what happens if we move, or what happens if somebody visits us. And is it only people that move? No. We saw that shows move, but also aesthetics themselves can move, as we will see. So let me give the floor first to Aleksandra Dunaeva and Nika Parkomovskaya, sorry. From St. Petersburg, both of you are based?
I'm from Moscow.
Yeah, okay. The rest will be, I will read the rest because it's better that way. So the title of the presentation is Stable and Mobile Elements of a Social Project, illustrated by the example of apartment Kvartira project, which is actually in St. Petersburg, or was. Aleksandra Dunaeva is a theater critic, researcher, and teacher, the authoress of more than 10 scientific and critical articles about theater and cinema. She created the pedagogical laboratory for school teachers in Bolshoi Drama Theater. She's a lecturer and theater pedagogue in different projects, creator and member of independent social fellowships for talented young authors of literary, musical, and artistic works. Nika is a theater critic and researcher, creative producer at the Alma Mater Found, a social theater project. They have many social theater projects, and she was a producer of the new space of Theater of Nations. She's also the administrative director of the New European Theater Festival, PR director and curator of the Center of Festival and Cultural Programs, producing more than 10 performances in total. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Attila. And as far as I have a reputation here of someone who is sitting behind, you know, and not talking, so I'm not talking. I'm just showing you some videos now. Oh, Sasha, you do that. So, as far as I believe in art, I really wanted to start with this art piece. It's a short teaser from our apartment, and one of the performances Sasha will tell you a little bit more later. And as far as I'm a producer, more a producer in this two women stand-up show, I'm going to tell about logistics and how the mobile and stable elements are organized in the apartment. So first of all, I need to tell about the space. Our apartment is like a real flat. Those who have been to Russia, and especially to St. Petersburg, know that we have this kind of squats, and it's not for some marginals, those who are homeless and try to find anywhere to live. It's a place where, after the revolution, so now it's for more than 100 years, people lived together, trying to share a kitchen and a toilet and a bathroom, if they had any, and having a small place, a space to spend their time, and trying not to argue, but usually it was a huge argument with all kind of social wars. And it's one of the maybe strongest St. Petersburg myths we're trying to work with. So it's a stable space. It's a real three-room flat where there are some mobile elements, which are the interior. We created it with a team of set designers all together from nothing on when we entered this apartment and we rented from the state. There was literally nothing. And now it's all filled with some things that people brought to us, that we bought at flea markets and in antique shops, trying to reveal the St. Petersburg communal apartment atmosphere. So the space is stable and unstable at the same moment, being an opposite to conventional theater, where I think where the mobility is much stronger, because even though theater is usually some space, it's still it has some wind, going on, because people are coming and living, and it's not for it's a regular theater. It's not a place to be in, it's a place to visit. And our apartment is more like a place to be in. And for me, it's a good mixture of those mobile and stable elements at once. Also, a very important thing is that people who are coming as guests and spectators recognize things from either their childhood or their youth, or they recognize something they brought, and it gives us a lot of loyal audience, who are involved into the process of this communal apartment even before they come into it. Another mobile/stable element is a team. We are almost now 40 people, including the guy you saw first. He's a director, very famous in St. Petersburg and all over Russia, and he used to work for Bolshoi Drama Theater in St. Petersburg. We have a lot of set designers, composer, choir master, and 23 actors. And here's the best thing about it. It's 9 actors with autism or Down syndrome, and 14 professionals. And this mixture is also very stable and mobile at the same time, because the team, we have like a current team, but in different performances, different people are involved. So it means that there are neither stable performance cast, no substitutes, because we decide together who is going to participate in which performance. And it makes performances different as well. Also in different projects, because we have, so far we have 2 performances, one for mentally disabled children together, coming together with their parents, and regular children with their families, and another one where people whom we call actors with autism and Down syndrome participate. We have a lot, like really plenty of projects going on, which are lectures, public talk, creative meetings, and 2 ongoing theater performances we have premiere this December and in January. And for all those performances, we choose to work with different set designers, different music people, and different, even sometimes, assistant director changes. But the producer is always the one, and the director as well. And moving forward, I can say that we have another stable/mobile element, which is a schedule. Those of you who used to work probably with mentally disabled, I don't know if anyone did. Did anyone work with mentally disabled people? Yeah. Lola Arias is something we have in common also. So anyway, maybe you know then that people with autism, and especially Down syndrome people, they need certain points, you know, very exact schedule and timeline, because they need to be organized. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But at the same time, they need to be very free and very flexible. Hi, Wojtek. About being inside and not being pushed to do something according to the schedule. That's why we don't ever negotiate with them, we just try to discuss what's more convenient for them, and then make the timeline which suits all of us. And it also helps to organize the actors, who maybe more of you know are quite, at least in Russia, irresponsible people who always don't keep deadlines and are late or something like that. So it helps to organize the group as a group, and at the same time gives the frame of work. And here's the key word for me, the frame. Yesterday I thought a lot about it when we discussed the borders, and we of course work with the borders, but we don't build the borders, we create the frame, and it's much easier to communicate with each other and to interact into being in a frame either than being in a border and limited by it. Another very important thing about logistics and organizing the process is that our performance is called conversations or talk. So we try to talk all the time. And you know, Russians are very well known in the world for being very talkative and trying to talk all the time over everything. So we talk with autistic people, we talk to each other, and we try to inspire each other in these small talks or big conversations. And we think that there is no language barrier. There is a desire to understand one another, and this gives us something to be more mobile. Yesterday, when we discussed this border thing and being flexible and if mobility is good or not, for me, it's both, and I can't say that it's always bad or it's always good. But I thought about, you know, probably Pina Bausch's experience when she traveled with her Wuppertal company to some country, stayed there for 3 months and made a performance. And it was locally based. It was with a lot of national elements, but still, it's for me, it was very German thing, very Pina thing, but at the same time, it was Chinese or Italian or Portuguese, whatever. So we are trying to do the same, not being so ambitious, but still, because we try to speak the same language as autistic people do. And their language is very different, their conscience is very different, and their idea of humanhood is also very different. But now I have a signal, which means that I have to give the mic to Sasha, and she will tell you more about not the logistics, but the creative process and how it's organized.
Oh, thank you. So you had a chance to listen to the point of view of the curator or the producer of the project, and I'd like to say a few words about my position in this project. I work there I've been working there for a year as independent researcher, so I did not get any money for my research. It's just a thing I like to do. I find it important and interesting. And it's a very good, very interesting issue for me to talk about, the mobility of researcher in the area of mobility of aesthetics. And here we have something to talk about with Nina, I think. So anyway, I have some kind of text, a report, just to be more focused. And it's a result of this process of my 1 year of research. The initial momentum, I will talk about very local thing, about the performance within this local thing, space, the apartment. The initial momentum, welcoming guests at the apartment, and final salvo, 2 songs sung together by all the participants and guests, create a tight framework that leaves a spectator quite free within the limited space, so that he can build his own road through the performance. That means that between the beginning and the final, the spectator or guest is quite free. Here and there, some kind of games pop up, but they are quite unobtrusive and spontaneous. Speaking of a game, I mean the creation of a certain situation in which participants and spectators are involved. Interaction with objects, a book in the library, or buckwheat in the kitchen, or even a short scene. Quite a lot of games appeared in the apartment, and they periodically rated and changed. So the structure within the general framework is mobile. That is, there is a lot of time when nothing seems to happen, while in fact the most important thing is the interaction is taking place. My colleague Marina Israilova, we worked, there were several researchers who worked on the project. The project still exists, by the way, this year, and I continue to work there. My colleague Marina formulates the concept of apartment this way. Here, social and theatrical performances are not divided. They are fused in the same time and space. The social tissue itself, that is the principles of our mutual interaction, becomes subject matter of the performance. Marina introduces the term ideorhythmic from Barth's work How to Live Together to characterize a process that is going on in the apartment. This term describes the situation when all the participants exist or live or operate in their own rhythm. Initially, this term relates to one of the ways of monastic life in early Christianity, but Barth expanded to cover any form of community where participants can exist in their own rhythm. This is opposed to Synabi, the historically winning model of monastic rule, when all participants follow the same rhythm. In my opinion, this difference of rhythm is conditioned by the very existence of special people. They just can't act in the same rhythm. Thus, what is happening in each of the rooms in the apartment adjusts itself to particular participants. The most comfortable and expressive situations and games for them had been found in process of rehearsals, trainings, meetings, that later were included into the performance. The professional actors exist within an unstable scenario. Their task is to be always ready to join in the play, to support it. Besides, they can offer a game, but it is usually discussed in a circle just before the show. This system of spontaneous ideas and changes of microplots works as a way of maintaining good creativity level of the performance. The main condition is that these new circumstances shouldn't hurt the special participants. So these micro changes consolidated by the main framework loosen the plot, making the participants praise themselves every time. For special people, it's an interaction training also. Unlike an immersive show, the roles of performance are orchestrated in the minimum and are very flexible. They do not build circles of circumstances as the methods of Stanislavski requires. Their magic if is the situation of existing in the apartment. They're proficient in acting, in being in this space, finding their way about the apartment, living at the apartment, and they deeply feel each other. Metaphorically speaking, we can say that over the year of meetings and laboratory work, they have grown into the space and into each other as a grass. So it is not so painful for the guest to fall into this new uncomfortable space and get involved into such complicated, intense communication. In this situation, spectator becomes more like an actor. He has to act to search his identities in these new circumstances. The spectator's strategies may range. The concept of the performance allows the spectator to focus on the text, for example, to focus on the task that he receives on a piece of paper when entering the apartment, and it is the most simple way. Or remain an observer, or offer his own game. He can tap into the atmosphere and go with the stream to try to break the situation and break the rules proposed by the participants. I should say that it's not so simple to go with the stream, because it's about being interested in another person, to be an interested witness of social performance. The participants also have the right to break the structure, even the mainframe structure. This is usually used by special participants. For example, after final song, they can offer one more game and then one more game. So we have 2 or 3, final scenes in the performance. This performance aspires to build Rancière's community of narrators and translators, an emancipated community where everyone is both a performer who demonstrates his skills and a participant who explores what these skills could yield in new circumstances among other spectators. I must say that it doesn't, of course, happen all the time, every time. But sometimes in one performance in some of the rooms, sometimes in one performance, sometimes in the performance it doesn't work, but they try. Well, that's all I wanted to say about the performance. And maybe some final words.
Okay, do that. First? No, I'm first. Okay, maybe I'll be the least one. I wanted to say that, the project is going on and it's still very mobile and stable at the same time because the apartment is given to us by the state, and we have a rent for this year, for next season. But we are very independent, as you can guess. We don't get any... we get support occasionally from the state. We've got a big grant from the President's Fund, and we work with private institutions which support independent theater in Russia. But the situation in Russia is very stable and unstable at the same time, so you never know, and the apartment can disappear at any moment because of such a stupid thing as financial issues. And it gives us both security and insecurity at the same moment, because it inspires not to plan in advance, which is good. And probably those of you who work in state theaters, I used to work for state theaters in Russia, and I know how bad it can be and how difficult. So it gives you an opportunity not to plan in advance, but to know the direction you're moving, and to give this direction to people who you are responsible for and who you work with. And the most important thing for me as a producer and theater critic at the same time is that we work together now for a year and a half, and the situation has changed very much, because we started with people who didn't know how to interact with each other, not speaking about how to interact with people with mental disabilities, and now they all grown up adults, mature actors and mature human beings are responsible for what they're doing, and they have a lot of their own projects. A lot are dealing with socially unstable people, like homeless, orphans, and some are working with those who have cancer and retired people, the list, and mentally disabled, of course. And for me, it's very important that they can exist without the apartment. And even those autistic and Down syndrome actors, they also can exist with us or without us. And they don't need our support because our work isn't organized as a volunteers hub, you know. It's more like a way of interaction, and it gives us much more than we input, but the more we input, the more we get. And for me, it's an ideal situation with being mobile and stable at the same time.
Okay, I would like also to mention that this, mobility, the apartment from the point of view that we talked about yesterday, yes, this geographical mobility, it's absolutely stable structure. It's involved in the myth, in the space of St. Petersburg, and you can't just take this flat, this kommunalka, like we say it in Russia, and bring it somewhere to, I don't know, to Warsaw or even to Moscow. But here there is some other kind of mobility, I think. And here we go back to experience of laboratory works of Jerzy Grotowski, I think, for example, because people, it's open structure. People, professionals or non-professional people who make some kind of social jobs, from different cities of Russia. Russia is quite a big country, so from Novosibirsk, Yekaterinburg, and there were many people who came there and stayed there for a while, for a week or more. Yes, involving in this process, and then they go to make their own projects, like ambassadors. I think this experience, it does not give any kind of franchise, any kind of methodology, but it gives some ethics. I don't know how to say.
Let's say method.
Some ethical position and some method, maybe some idea of how this web is building, and it really works. This web appears here and there in different cities of the country, and the idea of some kind of horizontality became more and more popular, I think. And one more thing, maybe, did you tell about the project? They began to work together in 2013. So it's not about bringing
origins.
Yes, bringing people with autism to this apartment for some kind of idea. No, this apartment has grown out of work, out of 5 years of work in Большой Drama Theater and as independent project. It's also important, I think.
And out of social projects really being impossible at the big federal theater. So they did this performance. It was nominated for the Golden Mask, which is the main theater prize in Russia. And it's still going on, this performance. It's going on like once per 3 months, something like that, 3 times a year. But it was impossible to continue regular work, trainings and rehearsals. So it was actually Boris Pavlovich, the director, idea to start something independent, and he asked me to help out, even though I'm based, as you guessed now, in Moscow, and I wanted to quit official governmental theater because I worked for one of the biggest theaters in Moscow, Theater of Nations. But before I did a lot of inclusive projects, and I found out that even if I was good or someone who I worked was really good, like director and the team, their reason for these projects was not to interact or to help or to do something good. It was, the only reason was the ideology, and I didn't want to participate in this, politics stuff. So the reason to organize an apartment, and the main reason for it to be mobile, is to be independent, in the sense that we don't want to depend on anyone, and especially our governmental system.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's a very exciting and complex project, raising many issues, and yes, I'm sorry to have to stop you at this point, but I want to give the chance to the spectators to ask questions, one or two, before we move on. Do you have some issues that you would like to reflect on? Not so much at the moment. So I have like one question. How do you, I don't know if even if it's a good question, how do you promote the show? Do you have paying audiences? How much is a ticket? So I'm sure these are difficult questions in terms of a project which is obviously tries to think outside the box in what a theater should be. But still, I guess you have to manage somehow your budget. Somehow you have to reach people.
Okay. Thank you, Attila, for the question. It's a good question. I didn't talk about it because it's too stable. You know, nothing mobile about selling the tickets. So we have ticket sale. We have last year we had 15 spectators for each performance because the apartment is so small. This year we started yesterday. Actually, I missed the first one. The season opening. We started with 10, but now we decided this night, we decided that we will switch to 14. From 13 to 14, we sell them all, and it's sold out always. And people from Moscow, like Nastya, for example, when she comes to St. Petersburg, she asks me to put her on a waiting list, because it's very well promoted, to be honest. But we don't depend on ticket sales, and we have donations, of course, because some people come and even those who bought the tickets, they still leave some money for gas and water bills, and it's true we put this money for the bills, but we don't depend on ticket sales because we were very lucky that Alma Mater Foundation, which logo you saw on the teaser first shot, they supported the whole project. And then this year I did an application. We've got big grant, 5 million ruble grant, and another one about 2 million for another project where it's still in apartment. It's apartment based, but it's going to be also outside, because for us it's very important now to try to cross this frame, to get out of the apartment, to be even more mobile. And so we get some governmental financial support, we get municipal financial support, and we have private foundations financial support. But still, I think it's very important to sell the tickets, even though we don't depend. So, we don't depend on them like out of hunger. But it's very important because our society is intolerant, and for us, it's a point of making theater with disabled people, especially with mentally disabled people who interact. Like here, you see disabled actor hands and spectators' hands together, and they're playing a game in the kitchen. So ticket is just, it's not something about paying the money. It's more about paying your attention and being ready to be involved.
Do you pay the actors?
Yeah, sure. It was the main point for me as a producer. We all get paid. Actors get very, very small salary, but still they get one. And the only people who didn't get money were the team of researchers, which is actually, I didn't like the idea that Sasha doesn't get paid because she worked so much with us. But I like the idea that researchers didn't get paid because it led them to be independent, and they insisted on being independent. That's the point.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there's a question.
So, I really, we have similar projects going on in Belgrade too. In Belgrade, in Serbia, I can share later with you some of the companies. collectives that are doing them. But also when I was in St. Petersburg, as I remember these, how you say, communal like squat spaces, in a way they are very invisible from outside. They are like blended into this monumental architecture. At least it was my the case when I entered one of them. So I like the idea that with this, and you can say if it's the case or not, I like this idea of kind of opening up such spaces, because there is a mobility like inside out, like a mobility across the doorstep of such places, because they exist. At least I get that impression with these immersive projects. Somehow they are very much place-focused and place-based, and they kind of begun and end in this quite concrete space, but then bringing the audiences and somehow also having this fluidity of team for being open for new people to come and collaborate, just to think about that mobility somehow inside out and positioning towards outer public space.
Would you like to reflect very quickly on this?
Well, yeah,
Just
very
one
quickly.
sentence.
It's really a part of the idea. It's quite a hard quest to find this apartment. There are no signs, here is a theater. You just go and you just have to find the apartment. But the apartment itself, of course, it does not look like a kommunalne flat inside, in design. I think you've caught it from the it's artistically built space. It is designed with the elements of different periods of Russian history, of Soviet history even. It's also a very interesting topic about this kind of space, the quality of space, and this myth of apartment, but it's...
Thank you very much for
very
the
short,
presentation.
like really one sentence remark. It's not an immersive show, it's a very important issue, because we don't, it's an open structure, we don't push anyone to do anything or to interact or to be involved, we just let people in. And I'm the one who is meeting them when I'm in St. Petersburg and not in Warsaw. So I'm the one who is telling there are no rules, just follow your way. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. And now let me give the floor to Milena Vučković. She creates space. She explores its scenic potentials, perceptions, and presentation limits and changeability. From theoretical studies, light and spatial installations, to scenographies and spatial design for commercial events. She gained significant professional experience in stage and production design. She's vice president of Senatoria, organization that stages performative arts in neglected built heritage. She writes and holds lectures about these mentioned topics. And let's hear your presentation about aesthetics, homes, and how we design and build our environment.
Thank you. And yeah, as a production and stage designer, I'm going to talk more about objects than people. Actually, this is one of the topics I'm interested in, like this connection and interaction between objects and people, how they influence each other. And as the topic is aesthetics travel with goods, of course goods travel with people and with money, but yeah, I would just like to kind of reflect on two big influences that happened in Novi Sad, city where I live, which is, just to make some small context, it's the second biggest city in Serbia, and it has now over than 400,000 people. It's quite a big IT center now and university center, so it's quite vibrant and kind of nice place, let's say, but it didn't used to, I mean, like as whole Serbia, it used to be a bit impoverished and neglected as a built structure and, you know, like the way people lived. So, yeah. So as I said, as a stage and production designer, I tend to equip my sets and productions with these goods bought in Chinese shops and also on the flea market. So at first I was really repulsed with abundance of those goods and variety of them and the state they're in, because either they were like really lousy plastic smelly stuff at first when first Chinese shops opened, and also like second-hand damaged stuff coming on a flea market. But later I kind of get really into it, and now I could say addicted to be frequently visiting both shops and flea market and kind of resourcing stuff there. And as I think that spaces we inhabit and create kind of explain and present us quite a lot. They talk more about us than we might like to actually, and they explain our attitudes and values. I started to develop interest in this, like why do we choose this plentitude of lousy stuff to kind of decorate our homes and surround ourselves with this stuff? Either like homeware, but also clothes, in both cases, Chinese shops and flea markets. And why do we do that? So this is how I started, like long time ago, this investigation is not really the proper word, but like research, and which resulted partially in this text. So it started with Chinese shops, like at the end of 90s and beginning of 2000s. And so these are like current condition in a shop I most frequently visit, because they're like into systems, so you can buy like officially through, how to say, like institutions can buy over in regular way. You don't have to pay with cash, which is really important when you work for a theater, as I work as an independent professional, so I have to present all the bills and so on. And so here is this really interesting aesthetic that kind of came and conquered the homes. And also, since I believe that, or I try to explain and support characters in movies as well as in theater with really good props, so I tend to make them real. And so I source where people regularly source their homeware. So it's blankets, really interesting shower curtains, funny covers for washing machines, and so on. And they're all flowery and really plasticky, if I could say that. I don't know how good you see that, but this is now how it looks like, and it's like developing through time. At the very beginning, like 15 years ago and more, it used to be abundance of goods, but they all looked quite the same, like this. And then also the flowers were looking really lousy. You could say they're fake from 1,000 meters different distance, but now they're really kind of expanding, and the technology is bringing, they look more flowers like than the proper ones, you know, except they smell different. So this is some of the homewares I kind of really always visit. And also the clothes, which is, you know, this posh TV commercials or movies. So this is this kind of empowered version of it. People try to look nice, and so they bought this really kitschy stuff, and they're also made of plastic, and they last really for a short period of time, which I think developed, has as a consequence, developed this attitude to buying and replacing stuff quite fast, which is like producing kind of third-hand garbage. And I often wonder where these things end. I mean, like they're dropped in a garbage, so people produce garbage because they buy cheap, and then it just gets broken quite fast and quite easily. And okay. So I think that society with small financial means in Serbia was during the 90s because of embargo and war, and then during 2000s as well, and also some people are really struggling right now. So I think society like that is really receptive to cheap goods, and especially that people had to kind of give up on buying new stuff for quite a long period of time. So they were really welcoming this new offer, and it kind of set really, really strong roots. So in Novi Sad you have all the time, during all these years, over 20 really big shops. And when I say big, it's like over 1,000 square meters, and like hundreds of small shops, which could start at 6 square meters and then go up. And in these 6 square meters, you have like thousands of products which you can choose. And I mean, like, products you don't even know you needed, like, I don't know, like rubber decoration for champagne glasses. I mean, like, I didn't know I need that until I saw one, and I just wanted to have it. And so many other stuff, like squeezy, funny, bubbly things that you kind of take or give somebody as a gift, and then what you do with it. So it's this really, really colorful, plasticky aesthetics that kind of firstly sneaked in and then covered as a blanket all existing home aesthetics, but also bureau aesthetics like business spaces, because people were decorating it with these funny 3D dolphins, you know, flowers, images, and like really, really weird stuff starting to appear everywhere. And people accepted it, and at a certain point, people were just buying presents at Chinese shops one to another. So even if you don't really like it, it's kind of obligatory to keep a present for a certain period of time, and then kind of after it collects enough dust, I guess you're, yeah, you can get rid of it later. So it's also the question of the value of those stuff for me, like not just material value because it's good value for small money, or like poor value for small money, so it's all right. But what you do when it's kind of emotional, if you get it as a present. So it's also one of the things, yeah, one needs to think about it. So it started, as I said, 15 years ago, and then it developed, it kind of conquered homes, which were previously built slowly, and people were like kind of layering stuff out, memories, gifts from other people, you know, people got married, moving together, formed their house slowly and easily, and you have these all layers of time and local cultures, little differences from place to place, from region to region, and now everything is kind of leveled up with this aesthetics. So this kind of uniformity I find as a negative aspect, a negative impact of this aesthetic. It is funny, but it's still of a low value, at least in my opinion. And I think it also has to do with this modern society we live in, where it is kind of obligatory to buy new stuff all the time and to kind of follow trends, whatever they might be. So it kind of formed, formed society where you just buy and discard and buy and discard, and like kids are having thousands of toys now while growing up, so they don't have value anymore as they used to. So it's like huge, huge consumption. And then I'd like to go further to the flea market, which is also a colorful place, but in a different way. Most of the goods that come in Novi Sad, which is like really, really big flea market, people tend to come from other cities to shop there, also from Croatia, because cheap tools are sold there, like proper tools from Germany. So most of the stuff come from German-speaking countries, and so these goods travel with people. Thank you. These goods travel with people that are coming on a weekend basis, but with the rise of this new class, IT and programmers, people who earn a lot of money and are living now in Novi Sad, and hipster class, well, group of people, class, so to say, there is another strong influx of money came in, and it can be spent on not needed things, but desired, wanted things for fun. So this old flea market, which is like really vibrant, and you used to have these machine parts you don't even know what to do with. Now it's this change of scene happened. A lot of like this T-shirt, like 80s, really funny design printed stuff came because all these party people were so receptive to it. So also the change occurred. So old buyers are really unhappy about it, but like these new young, well-earning people are having a party. So after they go out in, I don't know, Thursday evening, Friday evening, they simply continue early in the morning on the flea market, have this greasy, terrible breakfast there as part of experience, and then start manically shopping. And even though I'm not a clothes shopper there, I'm manically shopping ceramics. They mostly come from DDR, and they're in a really, really good state. They were preserved perfectly. So this is like just a variety of stuff. They used to be scattered all around. Now you can see little streets of boxes. It's new presentation happens. So it's, again, change of aesthetics happening in this microcosmos of flea market. And various stuffs come, as you can see. And so this is this ceramics that is now kind of throwing out Chinese plastics bought in previous 15 years and kind of inhabiting our homes. And now these old ceramics bought for, like, you can buy a set, just to put a perspective, buy a set of, I don't know, like 2 or 3 cups for €1, or a set of plates for €1. It depends how good you are at bargaining, and how impatient they are to earn money and go and spend the money. And so this is like my catch. This is what I buy, and this is what I do with it. These are all small ceramics. I tend to put these flowers in it and then give it to friends as a gift and kind of give my rubbish to them. So it's like second and third hand. And this is it with the photos and presentations. And so this is the thing I kind of wanted to emphasize, that aesthetics travel with goods as well, and especially unwanted or unneeded goods. They end up somewhere and they change places and the way we live our daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. I think it's a really, really exciting topic, especially to be discussed within a theatrical or a performative environment.
It is super performative. Nylon is having now completely new rules about, you know, behaving there. Like people visiting, also the shoppers, the sellers, they change their attitude. And they're kind of raising prices because they have these new customers willing to pay these prices. So it's really influencing. So
it's, yeah, it's
Sorry to interrupt.
Really, really exciting to see that the same thing happens on the online platform as well, that you are buying cheap stuff from China, from AliExpress, and you're buying vintage stuff from eBay. Somehow is reflected as well in the real world and like the local environments, and I think it's really has a great effect in how we organize our life and purchases.
Yeah, some of my friends are actually going like at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and buying this like Sony PlayStation and this, how to say, like techniques, all kinds of, and then reselling it. They're actually earning pretty good money of it, actually reselling it online. But you really have to be familiar with it to kind of judge if it's going to work or not. But like you can get an espresso machine for 20 euros and it's still completely new, but the box is damaged. So it's discarded in some shop and it actually ends up in Novi Sad in really, really weird ways. And there is this expression saying like, it fell off the track. So I guess some % of goods is stolen. So, but it ends up there and it's being resold, and it sometimes it actually travels back to European Union, which is, I find it absurd, like the way objects travel and we are a bit unaware of it.
Yes, reflections from the audience, yes?
What I found very interesting is the difference between the flea market where you are somehow recycling, taking it and reusing it, which is related somehow to ecology. You're not throwing out. Whether when it comes to the Chinese shops, it's really you are producing We know how China, works on producing and invading the global markets, and it's totally, unecological somehow.
That is true. I think recycling was one of the points I didn't mention, but it is kind of really, really changing attitude. Like even for clothes, people are being more creative and they want to differ, so they end up looking the same, very colorful and like crazy tourists. But anyway, they got to choose these pieces. They're not from H&M and they're not the same as everybody else is buying. And that is the really recycling and good attitude. But after some time, I think they discard that as well. And as for Chinese, I think it was kind of comfort that you can buy something after a long period of not having enough money, or there was nothing to buy in shops during 90s. So this was really, really welcome. And I can explain to myself or accept that this kind of good impact it has on people feeling better, even if it's kind of illusion, really. But I'm really concerned about this amount of plastics and rubber and, yeah, just things that got broken like in 2 weeks or 2 months' time and getting discarded. I'm really wondering where that ends. I mean, I'm kind of trying to trace. It ends up in rubbish. We don't recycle, unfortunately. But
do the young generation still buy Chinese stuff? Or was it something that kind of was in fashion for a few years and now it's no longer...
They buy like crazy. I mean, like when it's all sparkling and glossy and you have like, for example, flamingo was so popular as a motif everywhere. So you had like key rings, t-shirts, toys, anything you can imagine or not imagine, like sunglasses with flamingos. And so it's, I don't know, €1 again for sunglasses. So you don't mind buying it, having it for 2 weeks, and then, I don't know, just like forgetting it somewhere or trashing it. They do buy it. They do buy clothes quite a lot, especially high school people.
Okay. I think this is the point where I need to stop the discussion, even though it would be nice to go on. I think you can discuss further issues on the way to the theater. And thank you for both presentations. Although they were quite apart from each other, I think there are some interesting connections and about how we see our homes, how we see the interaction with the space and with each other through objects, through yes. Thank you very much for the presentation, Ninka, for the others as well. And now I think I will give the mic to Michael for the final discussion or the summary of everything that has been going on in the past 2-3 days.